Hey, so I did my country report on Brazil. Initially, I didn't really know a lot about the country. I just knew a lot about um, primarily on the countries surrounding it, such as Venezuela and a lot of the issues that they're having right now. Um, but to start off with, Brazil is actually the fifth largest country in the world. It is only slightly smaller than the US. If you put Brazil on top of the US, there is only just a little bit more in the US area wise. And the country itself has around 208 million people. The climate is primarily tropical, and there are mountainous areas. However, a majority of it is plains and coastal regions, and in coastal regions is where a majority of the population lives, and a lot of the issues are happening due to the higher populations than the rural areas, which is where a lot of the agriculture comes from. And from the agriculture, the main income that they have is through the coffee industry, and there are a lot of exports from that. Some environmental problems they're having is deforestation and pollution. A lot of the problems stem from a lack of funding because they are actually in a lot of debt. Um, there are also a lot of international disputes going on right now, especially with Venezuela having a lot of domestic problems. A lot of the people in Venezuela are migrating to Brazil for safety and seeking asylum and refugee status to escape all the violence that's happening within Venezuela. But originally, Brazil started as a monarchy, and they separated from Portugal in 1822, and over time they became a republic in which they elect their representatives. Dilma Rousseff was actually their recent female president, and she was in office from 2011 to 2016. However, she was actually removed from office because she broke budget laws and was impeached. Um, However, there actually has been a new president that was sworn in January of this year. And just a fun fact from the Human Freedom Index, which is essentially a scale from 1 to 10 on how free a country is, Brazil ranks 5 on the scale as compared to the US, which is around an 8.3. So, due to their republic status, they have a little less power than we do as a democracy. Um, but another problem that they seem to be having is police brutality and overcrowded prisons. However, there's a lot of violence among women. A woman is actually killed every 2 hours in Brazil and is assaulted every 15 seconds, which I've found to be a pretty astonishing fact. Um, the economy itself is eighth biggest in the world, so they have a lot of their money is coming from exports. They have around $217 billion in exports, whereas their imports are around 150 billion, I'm sorry. And the reason why they are in debt right now has primarily contributed to a lot of different things. However, the president who was impeached previously, Dilma Rousseff, actually did contribute to it. The debt was actually raised from 50 to 75% over the last 5 years. And they tried to increase the amount of jobs within the country. However, they're having a lot of bad labor conditions. Um, they're really made up of mixed and white people. 65% of them are Catholic, so religion does play a lot within the society. However, there is a large prostitution industry in Brazil. It's one of the largest. There's a real there's a really big industry for women, children, and transgender people. A lot of their industry does come from visitors, such as whenever they had the World Cup, there was a fact that you could gain 5,000 extra dollars just by paying attention to the German men that were entering the country alone. So the need for prostitution does go up due to the high visitor rates, and that's why there is a lot of prostitution in the coastal areas, which is where a lot of the visitors come to for different events throughout the time. Um, the houses for prostitutes are called zonas, and they're actually stowed away to where people can't see them. However, the prostitution industry is very known among the people of Brazil, but there's still the fact that they have to hide it and be shameful of what they're doing. So that creates a really bad representation for women, and it shames them. Um, Previously, honor killings were actually really big in Brazil. However, there has been a lot of different things. There was actually the Maria de la Pena law, which actually just put in a lot of different protections for women who were going through domestic violence, violence and prostitution, or just being abused in any manner. It put a different protection on them, and that was in 2006. And it created the ability to have safe spaces for women to go to, kind of like a safe house. And there was a study that I looked in, and there's increased domestic violence. If there is increased domestic violence, there's increased depression in women, and that coincides with their pregnancies. And that was just something that I have found. There's also, the way this affects women is there's a lack of medical care in the country. Only around 8% is even allocated to medical care in general. And there's around one doctor per 100,000 people, and one bed per 100,000 people. So there's really just not an industry there because they're missing, and there's not enough to keep up with the people. Something that happened previously was the Zika virus, and that really threatened women, especially pregnant women, and it created the Zika disease that you now see in only certain cases of women. That actually happened. There were 2 outbreaks, but it really only affected the first set of pregnant women, and that caused their babies to have small deformed heads. So a lot of different environmental factors are affecting women, whether that be abuse or a virus outbreak and the lack of medical care that they receive for that. And that also goes with the education. There's only a third of students that actually even make it through the 6th grade. However, there has been different humanitarian groups such as the Starfish School, which has actually put women in education programs to where they're being taught tactile skills such as cooking, business ability, and that's just for them to be able to take care of themselves, because a lot of it is built off of a patriarchal society. And if a woman's husband dies, then she's not able to take care of herself because they're not taught these abilities. So there's different humanitarian groups that have been invented to help these women for that specific purpose. And there's also the problem of all of the people seeking asylum and refugee status entering from various countries such as Syria and Venezuela, and a lot of these people are women and children, which is